Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. The 2017 Chevrolet Colorado ZR2 off-road truck's now upon us, arriving at dealerships right now, and I got to test drive it just a week ago up in Colorado. Now, I've been watching your questions and your comments on the truck, and there are a lot of them, so now I'm going to answer the top 5. Alright my friends, this is going to be completely non-scripted, so I might screw up and make a couple of blurbs here and there. And so we're just going to go down the list here of the top 5. These are comments or questions that I've seen that are reoccurring topics here on that ZR2. A lot of people have the same concerns or same questions. And Joe says, so is this better than the TRD Pro? Well, he's referring to the Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. And that's a very good question because that is the truck that everyone's going to compare this to. They're both mid-sizers. They're both off-road trucks. They both start at the same price, right thereabouts, $41,000. So that's a good question, and brand loyalty is going to play into that for pretty much anybody. But I'm going to do something here. I'm going to come back to this question after we get through the other 4. The next one, John Sotomayor says, what's the point of buying a midsize if they're going to widen the body? Might as well just make a Silverado to compete with the Raptor or the Power Wagon. Well, that is a valid point. They've widened the body. It's taller, so it almost would seem that it's as large as a full-size truck. But the reality is, if you take a full-size truck and widen it, which you would do to compete with the Raptor because the Raptor is wider by a couple of inches there, that's a completely different thing there. As large as it might get, you're talking about not being able to park the truck nearly as easily for most people if you live in a city or tight quarters. When you're out there in the off-road and you're doing your thing, that's really where the mid-size truck is really in its element because it's a lot more maneuverable. You can get it into tighter spaces. It's lighter, it's smaller, it's just more agile. You know, if you're an athlete, unless you're playing football where, you know, your size matters, when you're off-roading, the smaller and more agile your vehicle is, the better. So yeah, Chevrolet could build a Silverado to compete with that Raptor, and well, a lot of people might like that, but this is really meant to be something that's more akin to what you might compare to the TRD Pros we talked about, but also the Wrangler. And we'll get to that here in a little bit when we start talking about price, because the Wrangler, even though it's a completely different animal when it comes to off-road prowess and capabilities, we're getting pretty close here with the ZR2. Now, Van Hammer says, from what I can see, I think part of the rear shock's protruding so far below the rear axle looks like it could snag on a rock. Now this is a comment or a concern that I've seen a lot. Those rear shocks are hanging low on the axle. But I do need to point something out. First of all, a lot of trucks are like that. That is a common design. It's nothing new. The big thing here is, and something that Chevrolet pointed out when we were at the drive up in Colorado, is those rear shock mounts are actually the same shock mounts off of the HD Silverado. So they're not just everyday shock mounts. That is a completely different rear axle. It's not only wider for the wider track, but those shock mounts are heavy duty. They're thicker metal, they're beefier, and there are some plastic skid shields on the shocks, which of course not going to help you with big huge rocks if you're going too fast. Now obviously if you're really going to be off-roading big time, you want to get skids for those things. That's just something that you would get with any vehicle that you're going to be off-roading with that has shock mounts. But one of the reasons those are down there is because that helps with axle wind up, and with the diesel that's very important because of the torque when you're rock crawling and things like that. Even jumping, those staggered shocks with the leverage that they get by having that type of mounting really does help with the handling down the road. Next question. The Luftwolf says, $47K, I wouldn't take a $50,000 vehicle off the pavement. Nope, mall rated only. Okay, grow the hell up, man. This is what things cost today. Now the pricing on this truck starts out at $41,000. That's the same price as the Toyota Tacoma. It goes up to about $45,000, $46,000 if you get the crew cab with a diesel and throw a few options on it. So it's not $50K unless you lay down and pay the extra markup the dealer wants, and nobody should do that. If the dealers aren't willing to give up, wait a while, they'll soften up sooner or later. But I'll point out that if you get a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, you're spending $40,000 to $45K, if not more if you option the thing up. If you get a Raptor, that starts at $50,000, goes up to $70,000. Go out to Glamis or Borrego Springs and see what people are driving out there. You'll find that most people have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 easily wrapped up in most of those vehicles out there. So mall rated. No, come on, grow up. That's just not where we're at here. Now, that's just that's what things cost today, you know. Chuckwalla, which is better in this scenario, diesel or gasoline? Now that is an awesome question, because I would have never thought about that until I went to the test drive myself, and they had us test drive it in different scenarios, out on the highway, but most importantly, rock crawling, and on a high-speed trophy truck course, the Baja track they called it. So what I found out is, see, I'm a diesel guy. I love the Duramax diesel in this truck for all-around daily driving, and I've never really off-roaded in it until this. Now, rock crawling, that diesel is awesome because you can just lightly throw into that throttle and it just crawls. It idles up and over everything, and it's very easy to modulate. And with all the torque the thing has, it is a monster out there rock crawling, and it doesn't, there's no drama. The engine just kind of idles and purrs along and you just do your thing. The gasoline engine, plenty of power to do that with, but it just takes a little bit more work, and you do have to really modulate the throttle, because you know you're going to be up and down, and you do need to lay into it to get it moving sometimes. On the converse, out on the Baja track, high speed, when you're doing some tail happy fun, some jumping, things like that, I thought the gas engine was a far better choice, because if you're powering out of corners and you want to get the tail out, that gas engine throws the power out a lot quicker, and it has a lot more horsepower. The diesel, on the other hand, a little slower off the line. So the torque's great, but that's not really what high speed's all about. So those two engines are completely different in those different situations. Now on the highway, that's kind of a toss-up, because it depends on what your daily life is like. If you do a lot of highway driving, if you do towing, I really think the diesel is a better option. Around town, some people might not like the diesel because they like the power that gasoline engine belts out. So that's something to keep in mind there. Which is better, diesel or gas? Depends on what you're going to do, depends on who you are and what you like. I love the diesel. I probably get that because rock crawling and trail riding is really my thing for off-road, more so than high speed. I mean, that's fun, but there's no place for me to do that, even out here in the desert, without taking my life in my hands. All right, so let's go back to Joe's opening question here, which I said we'd get back to, and his question or comment is, so this is better than the TRD Pro? So I'm supposed to step in that one, am I? Well, I'm gonna, because I'm not a brand loyalist. I've owned Chevrolets. I don't own one right now, but I've also owned Toyotas. In fact, I do own a Toyota right now. And so I really have a pretty equal value when it comes to those two brands. Obviously, Toyota is known for reliability. Chevrolet, not so much, but that's not really where I come down on these two trucks. I look at capability, I look at what they've got and what they offer for the money. Now, these two trucks start out exactly the same price, $41,000. The difference is, the Toyota you get a four-door cab, and the Chevrolet you get an extra cab. But in the Chevrolet you get an automatic and a more powerful V6 for that same price. The Toyota, you got to spend $2,000 more to get the automatic. So I think at a starting point we're at an equal when it comes to price comparisons. You can spend up to $45,000, $46,000 on the Chevrolet if you get the diesel and you add options. So when it comes to nuts and bolts, just looking at the capability here, what I see is the suspension. Those dampers that come on that new ZR2 are absolutely great. They are so much better than the ones that you're going to find on the Toyota. And I'm talking about living with it every day. I'm talking about everything that that truck can do, because the Toyota, very well done. It's very good off-road, but on the highway, it's a little bit jittery and a little bit nervous. It doesn't necessarily ride all that well, and it's not the most comfortable truck out there because the actual design of the cab, the platform, is a little bit older, so seating position a little bit more like the 80s and the 90s. The Chevrolet, a newer design all around. It's quieter, it feels more solid, but most importantly, the handling. Those dampers that come with that, the Multimatic dampers, the DSSV spool valves, because they have multiple chambers and they can act differently depending on what you're doing with that truck, it drives on the highway just like a regular Chevrolet pickup does. So it handles very solid. It doesn't have that uncomfortable jitteriness that I find with the TRD Pro, the Tacoma. I think it's a better all-around truck, and I'm just saying that. Second thing is off-road. Not only does it handle well off-road, but it's got that front locker, front and rear lockers. That really came in handy when I was out there testing it on some muddy slick going up hills over rocks and a variety of terrain bits and pieces. Being able to lock both the front and rear axles actually made a difference. Now, yes, Toyota's got the crawl control, but it's just not the same, you know, because the crawl control, it uses the front brakes to divvy up the power on that front axle, And so you're not adding power and putting that power out there, you're subtracting power from one side, the wheel that's slipping, and you're sending it over here. So you're not getting equal power to equal wheels. So it might be splitting hairs, but I think overall the Chevrolet right now has the advantage because it's got more equipment for the money, and it's just more comfortable to live with every day. So there's that. Now, I've got quite a few videos on this truck. Right here, you're going to see our test drive we just did. Down there below, you're going to see links to some of the other videos that we've done, including reels that just have the raw footage from that test drive, or all of it can be seen by subscribing to our YouTube channel. Stay tuned.